Right. Hello. Okay, so finally back to work. Done with vacation. Um, it's been nice having vacation. It's not really vacation when you have two small kids. Because I'm kind of my days are um, uh, getting the kids to school and kindergarten, and then I spend like 7 hours alone at home doing work, but I really enjoy doing work. But I also have lunch where I can like just be in our house. It's completely quiet. I can like play some video games if I want to do that. And I haven't had like really any opportunity to do that during the day, during our vacation, which has been it's been a learning experience. I really need that to some extent. Anyways, let's rather talk about the change to impact. So I am really happy about this because I thought the problem with having a global state store, like it's really hard to kind of dissect these challenges. But I thought the problem was that it was global, and we needed like a controller level in React where you would be able to like mount stores where you need them, but outside the reconciliation loop because it's very slow in terms of state management and all of that stuff, and it's just hard to like just write logic because you have the reconciliation loop and it's calling again and again, and where do you define your actions, and then you have a reducer and all. Anyways, doesn't matter. But then I realized that the problem with things like Cerebral and Overmind isn't that they're global. It's that they're such a high abstraction that it's so declarative. Like if we look at Overmind, let's see, which is the good and the bad, because we look at configuration. Why is it so slow? Anyways, you have this mental model of state actions and effects, and then you have these namespaces where you have state actions and effects, but the state and the actions and the effects, they're defined separately. And the actions always has access to the root of this tree of state actions and effects, which is very powerful and flexible and is really great for your mental model. But it has some drawbacks because you don't have any scope to do programming. Either it's an object of state, just a plain object, or you have like just these actions you export from a file. And then you have these effects. So every time you actually needed to do like just creating a subscription, for example, you create a subscription you want to dispose of in a certain state, there was nowhere to put that subscription. You would have to create an effect that managed that subscription, for example. You couldn't just do programming, which is also the case for Redux, right? Redux only has these reducers, and then they have thunks, but you don't have any state in thunks. So you kind of have these stateless thunks, you have the stateful reducer, but you can't like do programming. Like you have to do both of these things, and that's what classes are great for. And then there are other concepts like private variables that are not observable and all of that stuff. Anyways, where was I going with this? Yeah, so the thing about impact isn't that it added this like ability to mount stores using React. That actually was a bad thing. It's good that it's global. It's good that your application is separate from the UI in these types of applications. But Overmind and Cerebral, the previous solutions I worked on, they don't have this function scope where you can actually do normal programming. Um, Everything was like separate and clearly defined, which is good. But I often heard that a lot of people who hadn't done much programming just immediately understood these tools. So they definitely are valuable. Um, but if you really need to build like a hardcore, complex, rich web application, Overmind is Impact is just more powerful. And the reason is that you instead of like having this object of state, actions and effects, you just have a function. You have a function scope. And in this, and you can think of this as a namespace. This is the app namespace, the root namespace. And within this scope, you can define signals, you can define local private variables, and then you return the public interface, like what you interact with. So this is the state you interact with. This is a method you can interact with. And then you have private functions that has access to both the public state, the internal state, like it has access to everything. And all the public stuff has access to the internal stuff, and so on and so on. And you can just keep building on this. So this create app, this can have a constant called admin, which calls create admin, which is just another function scope that does exactly the same. It has maybe some signals, maybe some internal functions. It returns a public interface, and then you expose that as admin here, for example. Anyways, so it's way more powerful. It's not as clear as like state, actions, and effects. But it gives you all the freedom you need to have this mental model of, okay, you build your application and then React just derives the state of that application to build a UI for it. But there was a couple of things in the documentation I wasn't happy with. So we're just going to take a look at that first. Because I got stuck in something. And what I got stuck in is advanced. Well, first of all, let's see, patterns. This is fine. I don't think we should... I don't think this is really that important, the dispose stuff. Passing dependency, lazy loading, that's actually a really cool feature. But we are gonna... Let's see. To create a type for a create function, simply do this. Function create admin, for example. If you want to type that, I usually do it on top. Say admin, return type of create admin. So now you can use that type. For example, we'll see that in the app I'm creating or refactoring, that that we have like create Firebase, where we have our own like custom Firebase abstraction that's being used in different other. I really want to give these things a name. You could call them stores. Maybe we should call them stores. It's just nice that they have some conceptual meaning. Okay, I'm gonna try calling them stores. But this routing thing, I went way too far with this. So let's see. We don't have these pages. And I don't think we even need this stuff. So we just, let's see. we have these routes, and then let's see. We don't have any of this stuff. So we have, let's remove all of it. Let's remove create page. I'm not sure what I was thinking. I was thinking that it was important that you kind of, as you navigate, you create the pages. But that's not necessary. And typically that's not what you want. Typically you just want these pages to be instantiated. It's just the router decide, let's see, route, router current. It's just the current route decides which UI are you displaying, and the UI is then consuming that state, like the related state from the application. You don't have to like lazy load it. That just gets complicated. Representing the route, and then we say get route, return route. Oops. So this is what the component uses to figure out which page to display. And then we just, you know what we can do here, which is kind of interesting. We can actually just do route. I really like when we have this functional approach, we can do stuff like this, which is really interesting because you just call this with a new value. Really cool. Anyways. Let's not expose the router. Let's just do this. And this is not here. And what we want is to say main, create main. Items, create items. So you have those available. And then you do, we don't need this stuff, app.main, app.items. I don't think we even need this. Yeah, and this is, yeah, exactly. This is what I kind of forgot. It's like, even though you're on the main or on the items page, that doesn't mean that you don't want to do anything on the main page. You might want to load something in the background, preload something. You maybe even want to interact with some of the state when you're on the items page. So the point isn't to like put these pages behind the route. The router just is there to tell you which UI to show. But the thing is, when you choose an item to load, that's also part of the router. So what we need to do is, let's see, let's put these behind variables. Let's see, const main, const items. So this isn't as important with main, but main items. So we want to do an effect here. And this effect is, let's just write it out. So if the route moves to item, we want to set that as the current item here. The question is that something, I think we should do that internally in items. So this is something I haven't thought about yet. It's very natural to pass dependencies around, but I'm not so sure about like passing an actual signal. So maybe in this case we could pass the router, and that allows the items to listen to the router. So whenever the router hits the item, it can set its current item to what this ID is. I'm trying to think about this compared to, like, the nice thing about something like React Router is that you have this very declarative representation of the routes and what UI is displayed. And you can also do this nesting where, like, you have a route that shows the items page, and then within the items page, you might have a route for an actual item, right? Which you don't really have here. Here we're saying, okay, you have an items page and you have an item page. And when you're on the, let's look at the, this is the route. So we're saying here, if the, if no route, we're saying not found. And if the name is main, we mount main. If the name is items or item, we mount the items. Now, and so here we're not in the UI here, we are not really dealing with it being an actual item. This just indicates, oh, we want to load this items page, right? And then it's the internal state of the items page that decides to show a current item or not. And there's nothing wrong about that. It's just that it doesn't have, like, the UI. I'm not sure what I'm trying to say. I'm not sure what I'm trying to say. Because what would happen here inside items is that it would listen to the router, and then it would check if the route goes to item and the ID has changed, change the current item. Which does make a lot of sense. But you just don't have this strong correlation between the router and the UI, which is kind of the point. Yeah, I'm not sure how I would do that any different. So what we could have done instead is that we have this general listener here where we do update the route, but then we also look at the route and we would say items dot change item, and we give it the ID. So we would do it from here, but then that would mean that change item would be part of the public API of items, which we don't really want. It should be an internal mechanism triggered by, and I remember we did a lot of this exploration with Cerebral. Like, what does it mean to do routing in the sense that, do you want to change the URL and then you get the state change, or do you want to make the state change and that's reflected in the URL? Because you can do both. We're even experimenting with two-way binding of URL and state. So it doesn't matter what you do. But at the end of the day, like, in terms of HTML, you want to have like a link, an href, or a hyperlink that changes the actual URL. So that it's just a different way of navigating. Instead of calling public methods on the application, you trigger internal listeners to URL changes to perform logic, which is fine. Like in a native application, you wouldn't do that, right? You wouldn't have this decoupled URL thing. You would just have some internal storage stating what the current view should be. And then whenever you go back to the application, you're still in that view, right? And when you navigate the views, you navigate those views like you interact with any other thing in your store, any other method. So it's a quirkiness of having a decoupled navigation that you need to listen to. But I think that's fine. And then we'd say, and again, we're just going to say use app. We can say main here, use app, items, oops, items. The current item is populated by the items. I think we're going to call this stuff a store. It's going to make it so much easier. It's such a nice reference. It's populated by the items, which listens to URL changes of item. Okay, I could maybe show that as well, but yeah, let's not do that. Okay, I just wanted to change that. Let's some doc fixes git add git commit update docs. Let's rather do some coding. Set upstream origin some doc fixes. Let's see, do I have Chrome here? This is me, GitHub. I hate when you have the auto suggestion going to something very specific. I wonder how you reset that. Anyways, let's do some more fun stuff. I'm going to do another iteration on the docs, and I'm actually going to call them stores. It's going to be easier. Okay, so I've already started this process where previously we had like the old impact way of still being tangled with React, in the sense that I have a global context here, I have an app context here, there's an edit dinner context down here, or store. The point of impact was to decouple from the reconciliation loop. So you could create these nested stores that are created and disposed based on the component lifecycle, but not part of the reconciliation loop. So you would still have signals, and you could like express your state management in a much more natural way outside the reconciliation loop. But as we just talked about, you are still entangled with React. So it's very hard, or with components. So it's very hard to understand like what is the actual application here as opposed to the UI? What's the state management and all the logic? And what we're doing now is that we have this app folder decoupled from the components, where you can naturally do the same thing as you do with components to figure out what's the UI of this application. You can see that looking at the components folder. And now we can do the same with the app. We can look at the app folder and we can see what does this application do. And we can much more naturally build that mental image and make changes to the code. Now, one thing that's interesting is that as part of this app context, we are passing in a user and a family here. We have global context, and we're creating these collections of like dinners, groceries, to-dos, and weeks. And that is to like preload all the data. In this app, we don't want to load the data as you navigate. We want to preload everything. And And the nice thing now is that since it's not tangled, we can just create like a specific store for dinners, which has the data for dinners. It has the interface for adding new dinners. It has the camera, for example. We only use the camera in dinners. So we can try to do that now and see where that gets us. So export function, create dinners. And we probably need Firebase here. I'm not sure if we need anything else yet. But what we're going to move over is at least the camera. Let's see. Dinners. Oops. That's the camera. And then using app context. What is interesting here, though, is that we have to figure out, I thought about this a lot, like how most applications, especially applications like this, like complex, rich web applications, they require you to sign in. So there isn't really any app until you have signed in. But here we kind of create this create app scope. And that scope has the authentication, but it's like it's being evaluated. So there's really no reason to create dinners or anything until you have authenticated. So the question becomes, how do you express that? Do you make authentication something else than the app? But then the authentication depends on things the rest of the app depends on. So you kind of want that to be expressed in the same way. You could, instead of create app, you could do like create app initializer or something. Or you can say the app is app, and then the thing we actually instantiate is like the dashboard. So you have an unauthenticated state, which doesn't have a dashboard, and you have an authenticated state, which does have a dashboard. But typically the app is the app, right? It's not the dashboard. It's like the dashboard is equal to dinners, for example. So you need like a common term for that. But maybe what actually makes sense here, which will be a good pattern, is that this authentication, this could rather be a promise. So it needs to evaluate your authentication, right? And based on that authentication, we decide what to return, like the actual state. So what I mean is when we do create authentication, yeah, handle. This is so annoying. Yeah, but we can. So now the authentication is just the authentication state. But I think, so for example, Code Sandbox allows you to be anonymous and sign in, right? It's the same editor. But in this specific example, you don't have, like we can't even instantiate the app without the user. So I'm wondering if we should actually move this stuff into the app itself. And then we're going to return the state of authentication. And then when you're authenticated, that's where you have like the full-on API of the thing. And then Because then what you can do is, first of all, yeah, authentication is such a tricky thing. Like, it seems so simple, but it's but we're going to start by moving it session state. What are we creating here? Session state. Yeah, and then we have cached authentication, which is the actual user DTO, but we want that to be observable. Like, this is so annoying. Like, why is this so difficult? Like, you can simplify it a lot. You could just have like an is authenticated thing. No, I think we're gonna do app state. So either this application is authenticating, or it's authenticated. And when we have that, we have the, what was it? The user and the family. But we can make those signals instead, so they're observable. And then you have like dinners, and let's just add dinners here. Dinners equals return type of dinners. Yeah, like, oh, sorry, create dinners. Or the status is unauthenticated. What's kind of weird here is I'm kind of like duplicating this now. So I'm wondering if we should just move this over. Or we can just listen to the authentication state and then put the application in its correct state. But it's kind of weird that you have the same states, right? So the app itself is going through these flows of authenticating, authenticated, and unauthenticated. You know what? Let's call it loading. Sign in required. And ready. Either the app is loading, it's ready, or sign in is required. And the point is that this sign in required could instantiate its own like flow of signing in terms of like now it's just signing into like Google. But it's about like inviting families and stuff. Oh, I'm getting stuck on this, like a mental. I hate that this is so difficult to model authentication. So the point is when you do, for example, use app, it will do we'll create the app and then we'll do app. Well, we will have to have the state. We check the status of the app. And then if it's actually ready, then we return this object. But that also feels weird. Is the app inclusive of authentication or is it not? I want to say yes, but it's just weird to model it that way. Or you could say like an app is really a session. So the first thing you do with an app is that you create a session. And then you create the app. But it's kind of weird to say session here. It is the app. But I want to do I want to say use app in the components and think of it as an actual application with user, family, dinners, and everything. But that means it's already authenticated. And then that doesn't quite make sense here. This is stuff that I think about. Oh, but maybe this is better. Yeah, wait a minute. So what we can do is we can have a create session. Or like create authentication. We kind of have that. Create authentication. And this will return the app. Yeah. The user, family, and the actual app. And then what we do here is that we do authentication. But authentication requires Firebase. So, and that's part of the app. God damn it. Oh, I'm having such a hard time modeling this. This is embarrassing. This is truly embarrassing. Ah, oh, god damn it. So what I was thinking about that would be better is that authentication is just a promise. The problem that would make a lot more sense because then what you would do is that you would just make the app a promise, and if the app rejects it, well, I guess that's not good either. God damn it. Why am I having such a hard time with this? Why am I having such a hard time with this? So what we can do is it's just this thing. I think my like this is not about impact at all. This is about like modeling state. The problem for me is that you think about authentication and the app as two different things, but the app is gated by the authenticated state. But it's weird to put your app behind your session state. Um, it feels like something different. It's also like, what if you're in your app and then you're suddenly unauthenticated? You want to be able to authenticate again and continue where you left off. So you don't want to like dispose of the app in any way. But if your app is tied to the authenticated state, you will lose your app. So maybe that's why I'm like struggling with this. Is like I'm trying to put something together that shouldn't be together. The challenge is just that you can't really express this well in code, in the sense that there will be certain aspects of the app that is not available, that has to be optional because it's tied to the authentication state. Oh, no. I think, yeah. You know what? I do want. Yeah, you know what? So, what we can do here is that instead of returning this object, we can rather return a promise. So, basically, we make create app async, and then we wait for initial authentication. The tricky thing is you can't really do that with Firebase, but let's ignore that for now. And what we do is that we just await the authentication, and then we return either an unauthenticated state, or we return an authenticated state which has the app itself, and then you can just use that signal. Or you can just use that promise in React. And it will throw to suspense when it's authenticating. I guess that's also a problem. Like, what if you want this experience of you have your app, you get unauthenticated, and then when you're authenticating again, it throws to the suspense boundary. You don't want that. You don't want to unmount your app. You want authentication and the app to be decoupled. But I really don't want that because so they are coupled in the initial load of the app, but they are decoupled after it's loaded. You can also do things like you can just create like a shell of an app, right? So you still create the full interface of the app, but it just doesn't have any data yet. But that doesn't quite make sense here because we're setting up a bunch of subscriptions and stuff like that. Wow, I can't believe this is such a mental struggle for me. Sorry, I just need to check my calendar. Yeah, we have 30 more minutes. So if you're unauthenticated, we don't create anything. But then you sign in, right? And when you sign in, where do we put the app? It's like you would have this maybe app here. I don't like that. I don't like optional state. Like optional state just means any optional state can be explicit state, only having a status, ready, not ready type of thing. No, I think let's move this stuff out of there and in here. Let's see. Let's just grab all of this. Why isn't this working? Oh, duplicate identifier. Sorry. Let's just have Firebase there. Let's drop this one. I can have that one. And we'll just do this. We'll return as new version. Return. Like this is why like my brain is much more wired for more like theory and academia. I think I'm not a very productive developer. I think I'm the kind of person that just loves to look behind things. What does it actually mean? How would you actually do this? How would you best express this? That's where I love spending brain power. And it's not very valuable. But it like sometimes it does turn out to like create some tools. I guess that's kind of the end value of it. It's that it creates tools that hopefully makes other people more productive. But yeah, I don't feel very. I'm not wired for like hands-on productivity. For it to evaluate the current. Oh my god, who wrote this? We use a cached user and family to get rolling faster. That's fine. So now we have hi Sammy. User roles. Yeah, it's not like I haven't really shown the app here. There isn't really roles in this app, at least not as of now. It could be like you could have a head of the family kind of thing, but currently it's like it's all hard. You can't even invite anyone through the UI. It's like I have to hard code it in the database. It's really only my partner and me using this. When does it actually set cached authentication? Oh yeah, of course it does it here. Yeah, so here, yeah, Auth0. I'm using Firebase here, so it has all the authentication in it, the SDK. But yeah, Auth0 is kind of the go-to, I guess, for authentication. Um, So this session state should be authenticated. Why does this have its own type? That's kind of weird. So we have user, and we're gonna have dinners here. And then we're gonna say, we're gonna have more stuff here, more stuff. Yeah, but I just said I want, if you get signed out, god damn it, if you get signed out, you shouldn't lose your app state. It should still be there, but inaccessible. So that means it can't be here. How would you model that? Like, not having these like optional things. Oh, I'm using it here. That's true. God damn it. 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 Oh, let's drop it. Why don't I just create like two things here? Can't I do that? No, I can't do that. You know, but it just feels so weird to have like an app here, and then we have like, oh, whenever authentication state didn't have, oh, status equals authenticated, then go in and create that like interface thingy. Sorry, it should be a signal app API, whatever, it doesn't matter. So it starts undefined, and then if you are authenticated, it goes in and creates it, and then we go and expose it. But then it might be undefined. Like, you don't have this correlation between being authenticated and having access to that API. It's so much easier to just allow. Yeah, you know, like my brain is completely constipated. I just can't get my head past this. And I don't know why I'm making such a big deal out of it. And this is all TypeScript's fault. Like, before TypeScript, I would just model things the way I think about it. But with TypeScript, I have this. I want TypeScript to understand what's in my head. And TypeScript can't always do that. Because I can say that, okay, the app interface is only available when you're authenticated. but it shouldn't be removed if you get unauthenticated. It's almost like if you think about the type of the app, it would be, it's kind of like this. I think this explains best what's in my head. I'm having a hard time expressing it. So we might have a user, right? We might have a family. Was it family? We might have a family. We might have dinners, right? All of these, we don't know if we have them because we don't know if we're authenticated yet. And then you can have like a status, for example, or is authenticated. It's like a boolean or whatever. So that one's always there. But now, whenever you want to consume this type or this interface or whatever you want to call it, you kind of have to check, is the user there or isn't it? You can't check if you're authenticated or not, if the user is there or not. And then you can say the way you do this is with a union to better like actually express this is, so if we are authenticated, then we know that we have a user, we know we have a family, we know that we have instantiated dinners, and that means you can be unauthenticated. Like this expresses the actual relationship between authentication and what you have access to. But now, as I said, if you are authenticated and then you're signed out, you go back to unauthenticated again, and now suddenly all of these things disappear. But I don't want that. So it's almost like there's like a third authentication state, which is like you were authenticated and then and now you kind of lost your authentication state. I actually, I don't even have this functionality in the app. I don't know why I'm diving into this. It's just silly. Like in the app, if you're unauthenticated, it just throws you out of the experience, which is fine, right? But for some reason, I got stuck in this. But it does, you know what? It is, when you think about these states, you have to think about them as actual states. And being authenticated and then being, so if you think about it from a UI perspective, you still see the app behind the scenes, but you'll have a model saying you were unauthorized or you were signed out or something. That is a different state than when you start application and you actually open it, or you start application and you go straight to the sign-in screen, right? It's a different state. So the way I would handle that is you would actually have an explicit state for that. So that would be signed out or something. Not signed out, but what would you even call that? Like lost authentication or some like authentication. So you would still have the app there in this state, but you can check it to show the model for signing in again. So yeah, that's the thing I was struggling with. But the point is, we just want to have an authenticated state and an unauthenticated state. And if you're authenticated, then you have access to the full API. Now the question is, do we put that behind something like a session or whatever? So, or do we just move the authentication in here? Yeah, no, I think we should put it in there. Let's try again. We don't have any authentication there, but we have it here. Let's see. Again, we have. Let's see. Let's remove this one. Okay, so our app has. We can call it app state instead. Rename authenticated app state. And we have dinners here. And then we, let's see, it has new version. We return the state, has new version. I think we can, has new version, returns, has new version. Okay, so now we are, we have Firebase here, we have has new version where we detect the new version, and then we go and grab any local authenticated app state. The problem here is that this authenticated app state is only a partial, because we can't serialize dinners and the other things. So what I think we should do is do this, and then we're gonna say let's call it let's just call it Firebase session, which would be this. And Firebase session. This is Firebase session. And what we need to do here is cached, let's call it cached session. So we have if we have a cached session, let's see, we're gonna put that cached session in there. I'm gonna say authenticated. We have a cached session, and then dinners is create dinners and pass in Firebase. So this is the initial state. We could maybe put this in a function. I think we rather want to do yeah. Let's see. Create authenticated state. Oh, I have a session soon. Cached session. So this will be function create authenticated state, and it basically takes what's it called, Firebase session, and then we do return like that. We say session, and then we can say create authenticated state here as well, with a user and a family, right? Wasn't that the thing? Oh, I think I know what it is. I think we just do as const here, then it's fine. Yeah, we can say authenticating state. Let's just clean this up a little bit. Authenticating state. We have an authenticated state. Type authenticated state. And we can move this up so we see it better. And then we have an unauthenticated state. Unauthenticated state. This is gonna look nice. Oh. And now we can say that create authenticated state. That's what we're gonna return, and then it's fine. Cool. Okay, so the point of this authentication mechanism is that it's a simple, it really is a simple mechanism. It's just using the Firebase SDK to convert your Firebase session into some state that the UI can use. But there's some quirks to this. We have a cached session because it takes a long time for Firebase to authenticate a session for some reason. I thought it was supposed to use local storage, but it just took forever. Like running the, or waiting for the auth state changed, which has the initial, or could you do, let's remove this. I think actually it's on this user thing. Oh, no, I think I know why. It's because, yeah, sorry. The reason is that this session, this Firebase session, isn't just a Firebase user. It's my user. Like I have a definition for a user, and the user is tied to a family. So you have to grab the user and you have to go and grab the family. Well, what I do here is that I just cache that as a Firebase session. So it still does like the auth thing in the background, but it just fires up the app much more quickly. And then if it thinks everything's okay, and then it turns out you're unauthenticated, you're kind of thrown out. So that's the trade-off. It's like you get into the app immediately and then you're thrown out again because it actually Firebase went in and saw that you're not authenticated. But I think we can actually we could probably check like Firebase auth user or something, but this isn't about that. Sorry. But now we've achieved everything I wanted, which is that to actually use the app, let's see, Maybe we can actually put that up here. Oh, sorry, it's here. Const app. So this is the app, but when we say use app, I want that status to be authenticated. And then we return the actual app state. And we should actually throw an error here. And the whole reason for this, pointing back to TypeScript, is that you cannot use the app in an authenticated state. Maybe we should just call it use authenticated app. I can't get rid of this. Like, the app should include authentication, but you only want to use the app in an authenticated state. Yeah, but let's do that. Export cons, use app. So, the point now is that in any component that needs to express UI related to the app, they use the use authenticated app hook, and then the typing is correct. Wow, that was a lot of... That felt wasteful. And the whole point of this is that, like, this is the challenge, like thinking about the pivot of impact. It's like, what you could do if you separated them is like, you could have just an authentication layer in front, right? So the first part of your component tree is the authentication layer. And then if you're authenticated, then you go in and you mount the actual app. Then you kind of maybe pass it on a context or something. Oh, maybe that's better. Oh. Yeah, but that doesn't matter. You can still do this. But yeah, what I was about to say is like, oh, you know, maybe that is better. God damn it. Fucking terminology. Anyways, sorry. This was me coming back from vacation, getting stuck in stupid things. We were supposed to have fun and actually do some coding here, but we got stuck in one of my stubborn what's it called, when one-way streets, no, not one-way streets, but like when you, yeah, we hit a wall on this one for some reason. I don't know. I blame my brain. But anyways, thanks for following, and I'm gonna resolve this, and then we're gonna do a new stream and actually just refactor the freaking app and have some more fun. Okay, bye for now.